Welcome to the Sharpe Way Show. I'm so happy that you guys have joined me this evening. Yes, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. It is 7 p.m., so what do you have to do? You've got to like, comment, and share. That's kind of the rules. You've got to do that. You got to let people know that we are out here doing this, that we are trying to make a difference, that we are trying to give some quality entertainment and education at the same time. We're trying to do both, and we got to get past that media blockout. We got to get past that blockade and that blackout, and those sometimes they try to kind of give us shade. We got to get around it if we can. So please like, comment, and share. And of course, if you do have some cash, please do me a favor, send it my way. I could use it. I'm trying to build my team out here. Patreon.com/SharpeWay. You got some of those Trump bucks, Biden bucks, fake printed bucks. I don't care what you got. Send it my way if you can. And if you don't have that much money, no worries whatsoever. Head over to theadvocates.org. Take the human respect test. It is free. Takes about 3 minutes. And boom, you can send it to your friends. The link is right here in the show description. I am very lucky today. I have with me a wonderful individual who is a podcaster and a writer and an author and all the things that are cool. The woman who I met on Twitter, believe it or not, it's crazy. I can't believe it. So amazing. Mahgdalen Rose, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. You are a self-identified conservative, correct?
Yeah.
And when people think of conservatives, they tend to think of the old white guy.
Yes.
Right? That's the image that we have.
Yes.
You are not that.
No, really? No, I'm
yes, not. You are not that. So I kind of wonder, what did you feel or how did you feel about the election? Right? Yeah. I mean, what happened in your head regarding that?
Well, I was never confident in this election whatsoever at any period of time. There were times where I thought he was doing better or doing worse, but this was never something where I was like, we're fine, don't worry about it. One of the issues I've had really since the campaign relaunched after COVID, it had to shut down because of COVID, was the management of it.
Yep.
And the people in charge of it, people like Brad Parscale, people who really had like Larry Sharpe, who was the only person in strategic capacity in the campaign. It was really not a group full of A-class people in politics. So I was always very worried looking at that. And then to be on election night, I think that there were a lot of areas where if people had been paying attention, maybe we would have known what was happening in Arizona. Maybe we would not have been so caught off guard. I never thought Texas would go for Democrats because I don't think they have the infrastructure there as a party. Right. But areas like Arizona, I was concerned about.
You were worried. Okay, so
worried.
You weren't surprised by this.
No, I wasn't surprised by Arizona. And the reason why is because Trump, in the 4 years of being president and on the campaign trail as a candidate, was very good at one-on-one. He could really take someone down. But there seemed to have this coalition of people who hated him, who he hated, who he had knocked out individually, who were coming together. And that was Romney, not to the extent of others, but the Romneys, the McCains, the people on the RNC who you don't know the names of, who I don't know the names of, but who hate him. And I feared what was happening with them in the Lincoln Project. So when Cindy McCain was in, Joe Biden's commercials, and then that happened in Arizona, I felt like there were a lot of areas where Republicans did not realize the lack of party unity was killing them.
This is something that I really bring up because there are two parts that really make me think what you just said. The one is, Trump is a big personality.
Yeah.
So he's very easy to love and very easy to hate.
Yeah.
Right. Big personalities are very easy to have a lot of emotion against. Very easy to do that. And I feel like, the best thing Trump did for Democrats is unite them.
Yes.
Right. I mean, they were all united against that. That was a clear thing. And that's what I saw. Right. People were telling me, I was talking to both sides of this and I heard, people on the left go, oh, my God, Trump is dead. Biden's going to just destroy him. We're going to win, 40 states. I mean, just like insane.
Yeah.
And then I talked to a Trump supporter and I get the opposite. Oh, my God, Trump's going to sweep this thing. We're getting 43 states. You're going to see how this works. Yeah. And I kept saying, how can they be so sure on either one? And with you, I was thinking Arizona could flip. I was thinking Georgia could flip. Yeah. I wasn't sure either way. The only thing I knew is New York was going to go blue. That I was sure of. Everything else, I was like, I don't know, maybe, who knows? But this is funny that you said that. So what I noticed, and I'm an outsider, I was like, I voted for Joe Jorgensen. I threw my vote away. So that's what I did. So what I saw is I felt like Biden did the perfect strategy.
He did.
His strategy was, I am so not Trump.
He did. He did the perfect strategy. And what's really troubling to me is that a lot of conservative strategists are acting like this, like what Biden did was so new, that what Biden did was brand new. He did a political strategy that's very reminiscent of the 92 campaign when America was burning and you had major job losses. They pretty much just applied what they did to the first Bush to Trump. And then Trump gave them more ammunition, being so overt and so boisterous. I'm a conservative. I would have voted if this was any Republican, pretty much, who was not like evil. I would have voted for the conservative Republican candidate. There were a lot of Republicans like that. It didn't have to always be a campaign directed at Republicans. And that's what happened. There, every Republican nominee inherits tens of millions of people who are going to vote for them, no matter what. Check the R.
Yep.
The focus on them in the base baffled me. Now, rallies are not indicators of where a state is. And I don't think that his campaign would admit that to themselves.
I see that in the libertarian world. I say it all the time. I mean, you see my show here, Sharpe Way. I don't have libertarians on the show. Yeah. Right? They're already going to support me. Yeah. Right? I already got them. Right? I got them already. I got to get Republicans and Democrats to care about me, right? That's the future of our party. And I think the future of the Republican Party is getting, in my view, is getting the youngster to decide this is right for me, and getting the person who is getting older and going, the Democratic Party doesn't represent me anymore.
Right.
I feel the edges of the sandwich, if that makes any sense, is where the Republican Party has to change to gain some traction, or they're going to suffer for decades. That's my view, right? They're going to hit those two. The people in the middle, the say 30s to 50s, they're not going. They're where they are. If they're Republican, they're Republican, not going anywhere. Yeah. But if they're over 50, then they start going, wait a minute. And I look at my wife as well. My wife was a multiple decade Democrat, 20-some-odd years Democrat. And at one point she was like, they just don't represent me anymore.
Yeah.
She won't go Republican, though, because she's been trained for so many years that Republicans are bad. Yeah. So she can't go Republican, but she actually does vote Republican sometimes. But so now she votes all over, right? And she'll vote Libertarian when I bug her enough. She'll do that too. But she doesn't just vote Democrat anymore. She's become, in my view, and it's just my opinion, I think she's a better voter now, meaning she votes based upon the individual far more than I think she ever did in the past. My view, she's probably watching now going, shut up. But that's what I think. That's my view. So I want to quickly grab a couple comments. A couple people popped up, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Mr. or Ms., I don't know, Blackwell thinks you're awesome. Favorite young commentator. Look at that. You've got fans.
Lovely.
So, yes. Matt says, Mahgdalen looks neither white, old, or like a guy. I'm confused. Because she's none of those things. That would be the reason why. Yes. Well, you have a fan. Thomas has now subscribed.
Wonderful. Thank you,
from
Thomas.
YouTube. So there we go. I love that. Arizona has a bunch of older Americans living in it.
Yes.
I think that's true. But the other thing that Arizona has, and what I thought of, is a bunch of New Yorkers.
Yeah, it does. And it also has a bunch of people who have a very, like the older Americans, they have a very set way of viewing the Republican Party. And this is something I've spoken with young conservatives who work for the RNC in those offices in Arizona. What the Arizona Republican Party is it's supposed to be classy. It's supposed to have a lot of dignity. It's supposed to, like it should, respect the military. It's supposed to be that kind of steadfast way of being in America, sort of like the American way of being in the 50s in respect. When you have a candidate who's not doing that, which is what Trump was, he wasn't that kind of guy, you then cannot anchor your campaign in Arizona off of him. People seem to really like Nikki Haley. I'm not a fan of Nikki Haley, but if everyone really likes Nikki Haley in one state, send her there and stop sending Trump.
You're right. I agree.
Couldn't happen because the campaign couldn't look past Trump and the Trump family surrogates and the group right after that.
No, it's a valid point, right? You want to send the right people into the right area. Absolutely. And the one thing that got me is there's a lot of people in conservative areas who really like Mike Pence.
Yes, yes, there
All
are.
right. And they've
Yeah.
hardly used him at all.
I know. It's so frustrating for me because I like Mike Pence and his wife, Karen Pence. She was an art therapist. She was doing a lot of great work that suburban women would care about, and I think educators would have cared about. And for 4 years, no one would talk about it in
Yes.
the administration. And I fear that that was because, in contrast, Melania was not doing as much outreach work, and they didn't want
Oh,
to
I
have
see.
that. Because if I'm looking at, we have an issue with suburban white women and mothers. I mean, this woman's a military mom. She has a son in active duty. One of her daughters is married to a serviceman. Send her to these places.
Right.
But
Right.
they were never as in as people think they were in within the Trump circle.
So let me go to the current crisis, if there is, if I can use that, in the Republican Party, which is affecting Democratic Party too, which is Liz Cheney and the Congressman Green is from Georgia. Is that right? I forgot where she's from.
Yeah.
Representative Green and Representative Cheney. Right. The idea that, Cheney voted against Trump, therefore she's evil. We got to get rid of her. And then Green is evil because she believes in QAnon. We got to get rid of her. So where do you stand on these two?
Well, Liz Cheney, I don't know why anyone's surprised by what's happened with Liz Cheney. There's a lot of Republicans acting like this is shocking. This is not shocking. Liz Cheney comes from one of the most powerful political families on the face of the planet.
Yep.
And people think that's not true anymore because Dick Cheney's not very active. They're wrong. He's very active in this. So let Liz Cheney do whatever you want. If you want to have a vote about conference chair, I understand that. I get that. Maybe you think she's not in charge of the direction of the Republican Party. That's perfectly fair. But to try to primary out a woman who does significant amount of fundraising within the Republican Party for, honestly, suburban candidates, people are trying to hold on to those more purple districts, makes no sense to me. And it's another conversation I was having with actually another member of Congress where I was saying, you can't say you want a big tent party and then kick out everyone who's not a sycophant. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. And for Congresswoman Green, the problems that the Republican Party's having there were completely findable before she ran. And this is something I say to my mom all the time. Do we do no vetting? Is there no vetting that goes on? Because all the things that they're upset about, well, most of the things were on social media prior to her run, some before her primary run, and before people were out stomping for her. The idea that Matt Gaetz is in Wyoming trying to get rid of Liz Cheney, who's a fundraising staple of the Republican Party, and just not addressing this other crisis. It's ridiculous. We can have people on the harder right side who are not also a huge liability in the media.
So is this an issue? And this is what I'm hearing critics say. They're saying the Republican Party is now in fear mode, that everyone is thinking that it's only about the short term.
Yes.
And they're only worried about this next election. And we'll worry about 2024 when that happens. Right now, I just don't want to get primaried right now. So if my district thinks Cheney's evil, I think she's evil, regardless of what good or bad that is. If my district thinks Green's evil, then Green's evil. It doesn't matter. Do you think there's truth to that? Or is that Democrats just trying to make Republicans look bad?
No, it's absolutely true. That's absolutely what's going on. And no, Republicans won't admit that's what's going on, but that is what's going on. We have a really big problem with this primarying people out thing. There was a time and place for that in 2010 when people were really not even proposing legislation to combat Obama's goals. That was a real issue. We had very little real bills being put out. I understood that. And that made sense. And we got people like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz from that who have great minds in legal matters. What we're seeing now is Eric Trump is angry about what happened, so he's primarying people out. And that's the truth. Eric Trump said right after the election was called for Biden, we're going to primary out everybody who was not, for Trump. I don't understand. And I am someone from New York City. I was born and raised in New York City. I do not understand why Eric Trump, as a New York City liberal elite pretty much, who was born and raised in penthouses, is in charge of primarying people out in the Republican Party. It makes no sense to me. But he has put people in fear mode, along with his wife, Laura. They have put people in the Republican Party in fear mode of being primaried out. There's a time and place for primarying people out. I want Madison Cawthorn primaried out, but I don't want all these other people primaried out. It makes no sense.
So is the question here, and I know you're not in control of the party. I'm asking your opinion here.
Yeah.
Is the question here a Trump purge? To get rid of the Trump people who are trying to do this? Is the answer we just shake it out and see what happens in the end? What is the answer for a Republican Party that right now is in trouble? And I think it's going to be at least several months before the Republican Party gets together. I mean, they have an advantage. Republican Party has an advantage. They have the advantage that the Democrats had last year.
Yeah.
Right? Democrats are out of power. Everyone unites to get rid of Trump.
Right.
So now Republicans have that advantage themselves. It sucks that they're out for them. For if you're a Republican watching it, you're unhappy that they're out, obviously.
Yeah.
But it does give you an advantage of now you can unite to get Democrats out, right? So I think they now have the opposite. Where's your head on this one? Is there time for a Trump purge, or does that hurt the party too much? And do many people leave if you do that? There are a lot of Republicans who like Trump.
It's not so much a Trump voter purge at all, or even a Trump, because major parts of the Trump policy platform, like foreign policy or dealing with healthcare, they should be in it. I care very much about having more isolationist foreign policy. I would be upset if that was gone suddenly. What needs to happen is the people who ran this campaign have got to leave the RNC because they have no idea what they're doing.
Okay.
And I say this because having watched this campaign and spoken to people in the campaign in the RNC, nobody had any idea why they won 2016. A lot of people think they won 2016 in the campaign because Trump was lovely. This was what was happening. So they went into 2020 with no policy platform. They had no policy director. They had no coalition builder. They had no policy coordinator. They had a group of advisors. They had a group of advisors. And for me, I want the Trump family to stop telling the RNC how to do strategy. I'm sick of it. They're bad at it. They shouldn't be trusted in it. Everybody hates the Bushes for all sorts of reasons. The Bushes were involved in like 6 successful presidential races in some way, or 5, I believe, and they won almost all of them except one. And the one that they lost, nobody could have won against Bill Clinton. So why are we listening to a family who won one presidential election on an off year when everyone hated both candidates? It makes no sense to me.
All right, let me grab a couple comments if I can. Tommy Brown says, to your guest, you seem concerned about the future of young conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel the GOP is leaving the young people? Open invite to you, all young ones, come home to the Libertarian Party. Join your true family and bring your drive and hope and help move liberty open. An invite from a Libertarian candidate. Larry, thank you so much. See, we love you. You can come to us. We're here for you.
My mom wants me to come to you guys. She's so frustrated.
Your mom is smart. See that? She knows.
She's so frustrated. She's like, just go over there. They're so nice to you. And they think that the election wasn't hacked by like China or, Italy or something.
Absolutely. So yes, the invite is there. Of course. Yes. Jimmy's asked, what do you think about polls and how they were conducted? What a great question, Jimmy. I mean, that was my whole concern. How could I announce and try to predict an election when I don't know what polls to trust?
Yeah. Well, I remember sitting in my government class in high school during the first run in 2016, I was in the library and we were looking at the poll breakdown for the 2 candidates like 2 days before the election. And I remember looking at Trump and Hillary Clinton's numbers, and they were not that far apart. And I said to my government teacher, he could win this. So for me, I understand why people think the polls are always wrong. I've never operated from that standpoint. I think some polls are wrong. I don't think MSNBC polls are normal or not tilted a certain way. But polls can be right. So I've never understood this hatred we have and dislike we have for them. So going into 2020, what polls were to Democrats in 2016, rallies were to Republicans in 2020. Everyone believed, based off of these rallies, that he was going to win. And that's not the reality of what was happening. So instead of focusing and looking at it from a strategic area and data and going, Arizona's a problem, we have to go to Georgia, we should probably bulk up in Texas, we're spending day after day and dollar after dollar in Michigan, which has never been a reliably Republican state. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC, got her job because he won Michigan. And she was obsessed with delivering it again. So she left the entire Midwest and Southern red firewall open for grabs, and liberal activists were like, we got this, let's get into it. And James Carville's in the South and Donna Brazil's figuring out how to do it, and they're putting together this, what to me is just like a strategy golden team, and we're sitting there stumping in Michigan. So I don't know what we were thinking there.
There we go. I appreciate that. David says both sides kept saying they're going to win in a landslide. I did hear that constantly. But here's what he says. I'm not sure. They both knew that it would be close. A lot of hype and gaslighting coming on both sides. I think there's some truth to that, right? Yeah. There was some people just trying to get their base out so much that they were yelling and screaming, saying, we can win the landslide, we can win every state. But I think there's a harsh part to this, right? If you spend so much time telling everyone we're going to slaughter everybody and then we don't. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And my mom brought up something, actually. We were like a couple days after the election. It was clear that Biden had won. And she said, I wonder if Trump saying that all the mail-in ballots were rigged, if that decreased his turnout in mail-in ballots. because people who were going to go and vote and mail in ballots, a lot of elderly people who didn't want to risk COVID getting infected, they probably didn't vote. And then so you add that to we're going to win. And you see this low turnout in these little pockets that went from Obama to Trump so much in 2016. And that's another factor. If you notice, Barack Obama's everywhere now. He has a book, he's on podcasts, he's everywhere. He was not during the 2020 campaign. And that is because Republicans dislike him for whatever reason. When you see Obama, I think as a Republican, you remember like you couldn't have the light bulbs you wanted. You remember Otto Warmbier. You remember all these problems and all these tragedies. They kept him quiet.
Except for Democrats.
Yeah, they kept him quiet except for Democrats. He was not out there stumping. So we had no one to really run against because Joe Biden was not really running as a candidate.
And Joe isn't a big personality. It's not so easy to hate or love him.
No, exactly.
Right? It isn't easy to love or hate him. Now, Harris, way easy to love and hate.
I know.
Way easy to love or hate. I'm just saying, much easier. And Hillary, too. Much easier to love and hate. Biden, it's hard to love or hate him. He's just kind of there.
Yeah, he is just there. And what bothers me about Harris is I did a video on this and I spoke to people in the campaign about this. When she did that L cover and she was sort of being rebranded as this happy warrior right before the VP debate, I said, if the entire strategy was based off of eviscerating Harris on a record and her viciousness for the last 3 years, it's gone because America doesn't view her that way anymore. Only Republicans do, and they're already going to vote for Trump. So we needed a way to say this woman's not prepared for this job. She can't do this job. We needed real problem solving. And Pence could have done that because Pence is a great debater. And Pence has been a governor and handled crisis after crisis. But the campaign didn't want to take that direction. And so you had this sort of empty debate, which I think Pence won, but it didn't expose her for being unprepared to be the second most powerful person in the world.
Good one. All right. Sam says, do you think the DNC would have treated any Republican the same way, or do you think they behaved differently because of Trump derangement syndrome? Do you think the DNC was acting differently because it was Trump?
No, I think the DNC understood the importance of going to work because it was Trump. I don't even think that they hate him more necessarily than they hate Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. They understood that Trump could win. And this is something that I've been reading about lately. When Democrats focus not on policy or platform, but on fundraising and a machine, they win. They know how to do that. They know how to lead with an ideologically empty platform. And that's what they did. So it being Trump only motivated them, but I don't think it made them particularly more vicious. Any Republican nominee is going to be treated like this going forward. But Trump had the problem of being somebody who had one-upped them. And that was not okay with the adults in the DNC like Carvel or Brazil.
Got it. Matt says, that strategy makes me want to vomit in my mouth. Okay. Not being the other candidate is not a valid basis for being leader of the free world. I would agree with you, Matt. Yeah. That's why I'm so disappointed that it worked. Yeah. I wish it didn't, right? One of the multiple reasons this election was so disappointing. I'm with you totally. I mean, but sadly, when you focus only on a two-party system, that becomes an effective strategy, just not being the other, right? Whatever that is, not being your point about anyone by default gains X percentage or X number or millions of voters because they are not the other. Right. I mean, I get it, but it's kind of sad, but it's true.
It is sad. So. But the Republican Party was not willing to work with anybody else. The Republican Party was not willing to work with serious religious organizations in the same way they were before. I'm sure they were not reaching out to libertarians. There was no coordination there, whereas Democrats were like, look, Green Party, you do what you're told and we'll give you what you want on the Keystone Pipeline, but you toe the line. And that wasn't happening on the right. So we're hemorrhaging support and different ideas and the left isn't.
Yeah, no, it's true that they were able to make a very good coalition. That's true. Yeah. So more than one person has said you should join YAL, by the way. There's like 3 of them that are saying you should join YAL. So do you know what YAL is?
I do, yeah.
So everyone's pushing you to join YAL. Just let you know that. So it's okay. So there we go. So Brandon's a fan. He says, right on, I like your views.
Perfect. Well,
so there we go. Yes. And Paul says, I'm a 23-year-old Libertarian Republican. Thank you, Paul, for watching. I appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. And he says he's from Chicago. Yes. Very cool. Yes. Let's see. Joshua asks, is the GOP dead? How long before Democrats implode and the Bernie/AOC group split off? So that's kind of 2 separate questions that Joshua gives. So let's grab one at a time, right? One is, are the Democrats going to finally fall apart once they don't have Trump anymore? Which I think is a valid concern and a good question to ask. When they don't have the unifier to fight against, do they break off or not in some way, or fall apart or fight each other? And then the opposite side, is the GOP dead? I mean, Bill Maher says that's a joke, that's dumb, that's never going to happen. And they say it after every bad election, the GOP's dead, but it's not dead. That's what Bill Maher says. Yeah. What do you say?
I think GOP is in real trouble. I think we're in really big trouble. And the reason for that is because there is this scam going on where the people who lost this election, the people who were in charge, have vehemently said that it was not real and that it didn't happen. So the very group of strategy people who are responsible for the country being run fully by Democrats for the first time in like a decade are the people who are not leaving their positions or being fired because the base of the Republican Party, it thinks that the election was not real. And that's why I've said in several interviews now, I refuse to be in perpetual grief over this because I feel like we gave it away. So I don't know how the GOP fixes this if we're getting rid of our big players like Liz Cheney and Matt Gaetz. I like Matt Gaetz, but I don't understand why he's in Wyoming. Why he's in Wyoming there. We're getting rid of the pillars of fundraising and strategy and everything, and we're like replacing it only with Trump people. And to me, if the Trump people just lost like the House in 18, the presidency in 20, whatever happened in the Georgia runoffs, I can't even with that. Like, why are they in trouble? And I don't see how to fix that. So then how does the GOP survive?
It's a good question. Absolutely. Okay. Joshua asks, will the Patriot Party carry any weight and basically deal the final blows to the GOP? So I guess as a general rule, in the same way, before we go Democrats, there is a thought process now that the Republican Party basically has three wings, right? Yeah. One wing is kind of the old school Republican, the Mitt Romneys of the world, more the neocon types. Yeah. Another one is more of the kind of Tea Party 2.0, more of the constitutional conservative types. Another is the more populist Trump side, which I think people are calling the Patriot Party side. Yes. Is that an accurate representation? If it is Joshua correct? Do you think the Patriot Party is the one that will come out on top?
I think it's an accurate representation. I think the constitutionalists are a less solid faction than people think they are. They can go either way depending on policies. So they're a little, you can work with them a little more. The problem I have with the right-wing populist people, and I understand the effect of populism. I think a lot of areas in education, we need populism. From what I'm seeing, right-wing populists cannot govern or stay in power. This is a thing that's happened all over the world. Salvini's gone in Italy. You have Sebastian Kurz an issue in Austria. You have these examples. Nigel Farage fell apart in the UK. Trump fell apart here. There is something that we're missing if we're going to go with right-wing populists because they can't stay in power. And it's not that they need a boogeyman, even though I think Trump does need a boogeyman to go against. They don't have a platform. It's kind of like when singers get famous at like 18 and they get frozen at 18 in development and art. Taylor Swift talks about this. That's what's happening here. They get frozen on what got them elected or what they think got them elected. So those three areas, the neocons, the constitutionalists, they can work together. They can figure something out. But the right-wing populists, who I want to have success, I just don't know if they can actually do it because they're frozen. Like
you think the Patriot Party actually is not going to work?
No, I don't think it'll work. And the reason why I don't think it'll work is because the people who would be organizing it are the people who led the disaster show that was the Georgia Senate runoffs and the horror show that was January 6th. And I know that, and people in politics know that. So how on earth could they possibly be trusted? Many of them are still on the run or being questioned by the FBI. How could they possibly be entrusted to lead anything?
Okay. How about Democrats? Do you think they're going to hold the line or fall apart?
I think it depends on how much Bernie Sanders goes to work every day. Bernie Sanders goes to work and builds coalitions and says, this is what we're doing, and he keeps the people around him. Possibly they could stay strong. One of the issues Bernie Sanders has always had is that the Democrat Party does him dirty every time they do it. They did it to Jesse Jackson. They do it to Jerry Brown. They sort of eviscerate the guy that they think could maybe change things, and they give it to people like Dukakis or Biden.
Yes.
So if Bernie can survive that, if Bernie can, in an off year, really go to work and fix it in his coalition, which, by the way, I don't even think AOC is really as necessary as he probably does. He needs people more like the quiet areas of the squad, those more left-wing who you don't know the name of, to be organizing, people like Stacey Abrams. If he can do that and hold it together, eventually the Nancy Pelosi's will trickle down. If he's not going
I agree. Stacey Abrams is a workwoman. That woman busts her rump.
Genius. She's a workhorse. And
100%.
everyone laughs at her. Everyone laughs at her in the Republican Party. And I sit here and be like, you're laughing, but we've got 2 senators, one of whom is like a serious left winger from Georgia. From Georgia, people. And
yes. Yeah. We have a Jewish guy and a black guy who represent Georgia in the Senate.
Like, that's some diversity right there. Democrats have delivered on that.
Abrams did something right. Yeah. I'm just saying, the woman's a workhorse. She made sure stuff got done. So I get where you're going with that. So you think that as a general rule, you think Democrats are going to kind of hold together. You don't think they'll break up. You don't think the DSA is going to come off and do a separate thing or something like that?
No, they're too smart for that now, and their advisors like being in power. And when you have people who like being in power who actually got in power on their own, they tend to be able to stay in it. Well,
there we go. Well, CB just subscribed to your channel, so you're getting a couple subscribers.
Welcome.
Hopefully we get tons more. We hope so. So Scott says, Larry, I'm a conservative, and I feel like the Conservative Party is in danger. I was brought in the generation that you work hard for the things that you have in your life. Unfortunately, the generation of today is being brought up that everything should just be handed to you. It's going to be very difficult to recruit young people to join the Conservative Party. I'm not sure I buy exactly that, right? I'm one of the few, old guys who actually has a lot of empathy for the millennials. I really do.
I do too. Yeah.
If you're a millennial and you came out of college or high school somewhere between 2008 and 2020, I mean, there was a crash right there, which hurt. And now another crash hits, and now you're locked down for years. And whatever you built is destroyed. You would look at this capitalism as not so great. It hasn't been good for you. It hasn't been good to you. It hasn't given you opportunities that you would have wanted to have. And not just that, you were told your entire life growing up, just do the right thing, just take the tests and get into the right college and do this, and there'll be a great job waiting for you. Yeah. And it's not waiting for you. And you feel like, man, I'm getting screwed. You guys owe me. So I get the feeling. I do. I don't know. Am I wrong here, Magdalene?
No, you're not wrong. I have a huge amount of empathy for that. I know people who have had to put off college because they just can't afford even to the application fees and things like that, and they don't know what to do with healthcare. There are huge, massive issues in this country for young people, and the idea that we're just supposed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps is very, very annoying and very frustrating. The problem I have, though, is the young conservative world, I have learned in the last 3 years of being involved in politics, is not an empathetic place by and large.
Oh my God, you're right.
And I think that the reason why I've seen this is because I was somebody who went to summer school. I was a real academic loser in a lot of areas, really struggled in math and science my entire life. And I was never the kid who teachers were like, that's a genius right there. She's going places. She's going to Harvard. That wasn't the reality. So I came in not having been told my whole life that I was a genius in academia. In young conservatism, everyone's a genius. And everyone got 100 or whatever their scores in the SATs. Everybody's fantastic at everything. And there's a lack of empathy. And when you have that then translates into let's dress like mini stockbrokers and let's just go ahead and, say like read the Federalist Papers or whatever. Let's go do that. And there's a lack of empathy. So when I say things like, oh, maybe we should talk about what's going on in culture. Maybe we should mention the fact that we need an audit of the tuition costs throughout this country. People tell me I'm a leftist.
Right.
Because they have literally, and it's like conservative privilege, and I hate to say that, but they have had everything in academia handed to them, and that transfers into the young conservative political process.
I think you're right in many fold. What people don't understand is politics is emotional.
Yes.
And if you don't get that, you're going to struggle in politics. It's not only policy. It is policy, but it's also how the policy sounds, right? It's how the policy feels. Yes. Are you connecting? Are you being heard? All those things connect. And I do see that in young conservatives, also young libertarians too. I often find the idea that they just don't understand the emotional aspect of what they're saying, the empathy. In the libertarian world, we often say we're physically conservative and socially awkward. So right, that's what we often say, because it's often true, particularly in the youth. And I'm trying to change the way that we have those communications. So I'm with you completely. And the second piece is it now makes when I talk about libertarianism, and I know you're not libertarian, but I'm saying when I talk about libertarianism, people ask me, should I talk about, libertarianism or the party or policy? I say, no. Give people libertarian answers for their problems. Yes. And they'll hear you. That's it. Give them an answer for their problems. We lie to ourselves, libertarians, all day long. We go, it's all people want freedom. No, they don't. People want answers for their problems.
Yeah.
They would happily take a benevolent dictator. They would happily accept that.
True.
Yes, just
true.
solve my problems, oh
Yeah.
good king. They would take it. So
Yeah.
our job has to be give them answers for their problems. And what winds up happening, what you just said, particularly in the youth, it winds up being young Republicans are the party of no answers.
Yeah.
And young Democratic Party is the party of bad answers. So you have bad answers and no answers.
Yeah.
Well, you tend to go to the bad answer because at least it's an answer.
Yeah, it's something. And honestly, we also don't protect young conservatives in the young conservative world. And I blame Ben Shapiro for this because he normalized being screamed at as success in like 2014 and going forward. I remember watching those videos. I was a sophomore in high school, and I would think to myself, why are you okay with being like screamed at and called horrible names? Why is this something to aspire to? Mm-hmm. So he created this idea through him and Breitbart News at the time. They created this idea that if you were a young conservative or slightly older, you were not successful or trending unless you were being berated. So what's happened is everyone has assumed this really hard shell and to survive it, because you have to, and they go into these combative areas. I am yelled at all the time by young conservatives because they're like, you're not debating enough, you're not taking a hard enough line, you're tweeting too much about Taylor Swift or pop culture. And I'm like, I'm a human being and I'm not comfortable with being called horrible names. And somehow that's become like a problem in young conservatism that I don't want to be berated every day publicly and trend because of it.
No, I'm with you. And the thing that has always bothered me about Ben Shapiro, and it's going to make a lot of conservatives love Ben Shapiro, and they're on my show, so some people are getting mad now. I'm sorry. I don't want to trigger Ben Shapiro fans. Please stay. I'm just telling you a thing that he said that does drive me crazy, that I hear all the time. Facts don't care about your feelings.
I know.
And I said the same thing. Well, then those are some stupid facts, because facts really should care about feelings, because feelings ignore facts, feelings change facts, feelings create facts out of thin air. Yeah. Feelings are way more powerful than facts. I mean, way more powerful than facts. Facts get their butt kicked every day by feelings. Every day. Every
single day. People are like, Donald Trump is a racist is a fact in certain areas because of feelings.
Yes.
And we're not allowed to say that. Yeah. Yes. It's Joe Biden is a lovely human being who's had absolutely no policy issues. That's a fact because of feelings.
Because of feelings. Yes. Yeah. Not because it's true.
No.
Because of feelings.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, you're totally right. Yes. So thank you for that. Let me grab a couple more if I could. Joshua, he's interested in you. He says, how many Republicans are actually in Congress right now who are truly conservatives? That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Do you think the party is still, do you think the Republican Party is still conservative, or is it just not Democrat, right? Which one is it in your view?
I think it's kind of some of both. I think the party is still socially conservative, at least in what they say. I think in foreign policy, the majority of the party is conservative in withholding action and keeping things for America. People who are not really trying not to even say it anymore because they know they can't just blame it on Trump. People just don't want useless wars. So they're conservative in that. They're not conservative on the economy at all. I mean, that's just been gone. I don't even try anymore. That's just been gone for years. Overall, I would say that we're holding on to conservatism by social conservatism. So young conservatives who tell me like, oh, we have to move forward and be pro-choice and everything. I'm like, that's the only thing anchoring the Republican Party to conservatism right now. You'll lose like every Christian voter who cares about that in the country. Don't do that. Yes. But
Jimmy brings up the same concept. He's wondering if it's conservative also.
Yeah.
And the reason why I get yelled at by libertarians is not the same reason you get yelled at by your conservatives, is because I won't hate the other.
Yeah.
Right? Libertarians really want me to hate the other, and they want me to yell at them and be mad at them. Yeah. I don't do that. So when you talk about being conservative, I do believe, and I'm totally biased, my libertarian is on my sleeve. I think Libertarian Party is open to both conservatives and liberals, as long as you don't want to make policies that hurt either of them.
Yes, I think that's true. And I say all the time, you can believe whatever you want and be an activist in the Republican Party, vote Republican, whatever. But you can't necessarily believe whatever you want and run as a Republican. We have to have some cutoffs for what we think is okay for everything. And that has been the misstep, I believe, of the Trump circle within 2018 in candidate selection for the House and the Senate and everything. They were looking at people who just believed whatever they wanted and were running as conservatives, Republicans because they liked Trump. And voters were like, yeah, but you don't know anything about the law. You don't know anything about agriculture. And that held them back.
Okay. I see where that goes. Paula says the GOP got lazy.
Yeah, GOP is so lazy. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. You know, me and Ronna McDaniel, we really need to have a conversation because I just can't with that woman. She stands around and she says things like, we're at a spat. I'm sorry, you've hemorrhaged she said that, you've hemorrhaged the entire Bush wing of political strategy, which won every race it was involved in. You've hemorrhaged majority of like serious Trump supporters who are now independents because they're angry at what's happening. This is not a spat. This is like a war of the roses. You're in a civil war right now. And she stands there and she's like, but would you like a lovely dish? Would you like to have some lovely food? It's mind-boggling. When January 6th was happening, we're having the biggest crisis in the Republican Party, probably at least appearance crisis ever. She's having a gala. And
wow.
She's having a gala. And people are wondering why we've lost everything because of Ronna McDaniel's efforts.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Jones-san says, hello. So there we go. Somebody saying hi. Good. There we go. David says, Tony Matt Ferrari says, that's how elections go nowadays. It's my guy's just slightly less crappy than the other guy. Yeah. I think there's some truth to that, right? I think there is some. So, Tom loves your mom now, by the way.
Oh, wonderful! I'll tell her.
There we go. See, Brian says mom knows best. Your mom might be right here. I'm just saying. You knew if you came on the show, you get some pressure, right? I mean, you knew that, right?
I come from all sides.
Okay, just as long as you knew. All right. I don't want to say that I ambushed you. That's all. Oh, good. All right. Sam says there's a reason Romney and McCain failed nationally. Stodgy old man image has failed in suburbs. States that hated Trump for not being McCain will drag the RNC into consistent losses. Do you think there has to be a new face of the Republican Party?
Yes, I do.
And what does that face have to look like? Do you know?
That face has to be goofy and a little disarming and brilliant. And what we need is a genius, but not an intellectual for 2024. There is a time in American history, this was kind of what was happening when Nixon first got elected, where America genuinely needs a genius at the helm and somebody who truly understands what's going on a data level, a policy level. That's what we need right now. And I think it has to be somebody who's max in the middle of their 50s, max, someone younger in comparison to Biden and everything. We need somebody who has not held elected office before, who does not have a record that we can criticize like that, someone in the private sector or the media sector, somebody who can come in and who can say, hey, you all hate each other and that's fine, but the economy's failing. And it doesn't become about what they did when they were governor, what they did when they were senator. Being a politician, in a lot of ways, is disqualifying you from becoming the Republican nominee now. And until we get somebody who is a little goofy. When people think of George W. Bush, they think of the gaffes and everything, and they think of how funny he was. It was disarming. And if you think about Reagan, he was joking, he wasn't goofy, but he joked around. It was disarming. In order for Republicans to have 2 terms in the White House and to be successful, that person has got to be underestimated in the suburbs. And that's what we need in 2024.
That is a very interesting way of looking at it. The person has to be underestimated in the suburbs. I like that. Okay, that's something to think about. Okay, good. I want to talk quickly about respect. This is a commercial. Larry Sharpe here, host of the Sharpe Way show, and boy, do we need to start coming together and healing now more than ever. Best way to do that? Respect. We got to respect each other so we can start to come together. How can we facilitate that? Head over to the advocates.org/human respect tests. Yes, there's a test for human respect. You didn't think there was? There is. Take that test. About 3 minutes. That's it. It's done. Share it online. Share it on your social media. Let other people see it. Let them take the test. Share it with others. Let's start talking about respect. Let's start talking about healing. Let's find the right answer for us to move forward. The advocates.org human respect tests. That guy's right. So you want to head on over and look at the show description. There's a link right there. Click that link, take that test, pass it around, let people know that you care and that you are respectful. And I hope that you are. So let me go a little bit off topic here. Who do you think steps up in the Republican side? You said you want somebody goofy. Do you think you get that person, or you think you're asking for something that doesn't exist? Do you think it is like a Ted Cruz or someone like that who winds up being the de facto leader? Is it someone brand new? Is it a Josh Hawley, the youngster from the Midwest? What's your gut tell you?
Well, Josh Hawley, I've never been super impressed by Josh Hawley, and I was less impressed after reading that New York Post editorial he did. I don't think Josh Hawley is as forward-thinking and innovative as people think he is on the Republican Party. I don't think that he has like a grade A mind. I don't believe that that's what's going on here. I think he's a very capable senator. If I was in his state, I would vote for him. I support him as a senator being there, but I don't think he has what it takes. He's also too young. And the party, I believe, would not thrive under him. Ted Cruz, I don't think is going to ever be president. What I want Ted Cruz to do is I want Ted Cruz to commit to being the new lion of the Senate and commit to being somebody who is going to shepherd the legislative process of America forward. And if he does that and stops with this presidential stuff, I think he could become a real force in American history. So I don't believe he's going to be president. I want him to focus on legislation. He could possibly be attorney general, though. That's a possibility. In terms of who the future is, I don't think that there's anybody in Congress who I would be thrilled about as a nominee, because I don't believe when push comes to shove, they're going to be able to carry the party. Someone like Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is an issue for me because I'm always wrong about everything with Ron DeSantis. I didn't think he was going to win the nomination for governor. I didn't think he was going to win governor. I didn't think people were going to like him. So I'm often wrong about Florida and Ron DeSantis. That being said, I fear that Ron DeSantis can be easily packaged by the media into Trump 2.0. And if that happens, we are done. It's over. Democrats will become super glued together. Just wait it out. So I don't think that that's the future of it. There's also talk of the Trump kids. If the Trump kid becomes nominee, I will become a libertarian.
Yes, I can only hope. I can only hope.
I can't do it at all. No way. And for me, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see some people in the private sector come in, and they're going to say, maybe even someone in the science field, somebody who is in the news media, someone who understands that populism is not necessarily a way to govern, but is a way to get elected and a way to figure out how you're going to govern. And when you have that, you can have forward thinking. The Republican Party is unique in that everything has to change from the top down. It's like Reagan economics. So if we have somebody at the top who's goofy and kind but sharp and not naive and treats people well, that will filter down into the young conservative world. It can't go from the bottom up. So we need someone in the private sector, the news media, to come in and fix that and realign us, because it's never going to come up from the grassroots.
Got it. So maybe it's some guy who's tired of the taxation in California, and they pack up and move to Texas and then decide, hey, I'm going to run for governor, president, insert thing here.
Yes.
Okay. Brennan says, Republicans really try hard to garner hate for Biden. They did. It didn't work that well, though. It didn't. I think they probably love that he did away with Keystone because it's an easy way to make some people hate him. That's true. Yeah. But besides that, all they can do is say some crazy pedophile crap that makes them sound like crazies.
Yeah.
I think that you're totally right, Brennan. I think that absolutely backfired.
Yes, it did. It did absolutely backfire. And it's so sad to me because I really hate the way that the environmental movement talks about like coal miners and people who have had that. To me, it's as if everyone in the entire country is allowed to have some emotional attachment to their field and their culture except coal miners. Coal miners are like the cutaways. So that frustrated me. It's always frustrated me. And for the Trump campaign to never mention the Keystone Pipeline or coal mines that are going to be shut down now because of new environmental restrictions, to me, it made them look like they were distancing themselves from the people who got them elected. So I think that is going to continue to happen. And it's not necessarily going to equal hate for Biden. It might equal hate for the Democrats, but it's very difficult to get people to hate Biden. I don't want to hate Biden either. Biden's not somebody you want to hate. If you're not in the Beltway, you don't know enough about Biden to hate Biden.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I'm with you. Jimmy says, Ms. Rose, what's your views on third parties? As a follow-up, what do you think about the media ignoring third parties and not being included in polls?
Well, I think third parties that are new are a disaster and shouldn't be doing like this Patriot Party thing should not be happening. Anyone who's supporting that in the Republican Party is they're out of their minds. I think third parties, what I would really like to see is I'd like to see some some major seats won in the Senate and the House. And because then you can really have coalition governments that that are sort of like what you have in other countries, not to compare us to Europe, but there's a freer exchange of ideas sometimes because you have coalitions. You have people have to make deals aside from just between two parties. If we had a whole slate of libertarian senators, like our foreign policy would just be wonderful, in my opinion. We would not be declaring war areas. We would not
That'd
be doing
be nice.
But we don't have that. So people who take that line don't garner as much respect or power. If we had huge amounts of, if we had a libertarian caucus in the House, the Freedom Caucus would have to behave. The House Democrats would have to come to the table with real solutions, not just cutting things. Like that it would create diversity of thought. And we desperately need that in the Republican Party. So I want to see that. I want to see people coming in mayoral races. I want to see that the American political landscape expand a little bit because everyone is suffocating under what's happening right now.
Absolutely. And what most we don't get is it's basically two big parties, a massive gap, Libertarian Party, massive gap, all the other parties.
Yes.
That's really what it is. The only chance is Libertarian Party. And people get mad at me all the time. They go, Larry, Libertarian Party is a disaster. It is. That's an accurate statement. We are a dumpster fire on wheels.
Which party isn't at this point? But
I mean, we're really bad. I mean, we fight each other. Yeah, absolutely. However, there's a big however here. Without it, we're walking. So I stay on that dumpster fire with wheels and keep trying to put the fire out because that's the only vehicle I got. It's the best one I got, and I'm holding on tight because that's the one I think is going to get us to the promised land. I hope. Eventually, that's where I am, but it has problems, lots of them. So, Paula says, my concern is not who won, but that the POTUS has this much power to begin with.
That is an issue. I don't understand why Joe Biden or any president is allowed to take actions like the Keystone Pipeline or like these massive executive orders without any sort of congressional oversight. But then on the flip side of that, the other party will just hold everything up. For months and months. I mean, there were Trump nominees that he was in his third year of his presidency that weren't confirmed. So it's until you solve the gridlock in Congress, I don't know how you take away power from the president because things have to get done on some
That
level.
Is my point. People tell me all the time as libertarians goes, aren't you happy when we have gridlock? No. Isn't that great? Then they can't do anything wrong. I go, no, because by default, when we have gridlock, it means the president will get more power because he'll do something. And then the judges have to become activist judges.
Yes.
They have no choice but to become activist judges because the legislature is not doing their job. Yeah. When the legislature is not doing their job, you're forcing the president by default to be a dictator, and you're forcing the judicial branch to be activist judges. You are forcing them to do so because the legislature won't do their job. And the worst part is the legislature, we are helping them.
Yeah.
Because now they just get mad when things go wrong and blame someone else and take credit when things go well and say, see, I supported the president when it went well.
Yeah. So we have a legislation group, people that are in like abdication of their responsibilities right now completely.
100%.
And that's why I want someone like Ted Cruz to stop trying to run for president and reform the Senate, because Mitch McConnell is in a lot of trouble in a lot of different areas. He's in primary trouble. He's in fundraising trouble. Chuck Schumer is going to walk all over him. So we need somebody who's genuinely a genius. We have this idea in the Republican Party that we can't have really smart people at the helm of things right now. I don't know where this came from, but I want to see it erased because the Democrats do, and that's terrifying.
There we go. So do you think that the GOP is preparing for AOC and what she could become? Now, AOC is literally my congressperson.
I know. I'm so sorry.
I know. I accept your condolences. The issue, though, about her is I think she has become a little bit soft.
Oh, yeah, she has.
She was a hardcore worker. She busted her rump for that seat. She was not. Her team literally knocked on my door. I'm not joking. Her team literally knocked on my door. They were not playing around to win it. Now she's kind of backing off and doing some YouTube makeup stuff. She's like that. But she is a great face for the DNC. She's young. She's a New Yorker. She's Hispanic. I mean, she's a good face for a movement. Yeah. I don't know if she's the one who really is behind it, if that makes any sense.
she's not. And I'm glad you mentioned that because Republicans don't want to believe that she's gotten soft. I saw an article from Politico a while ago about how the leftist base was getting frustrated with her because she seemed to be towing the line on things. This is something that I think you're going to see more and more and more. AOC is somebody who I believe is very unhappy where she is. I think she's miserable. And I say this as somebody, as another young woman in politics. I'm also from New York. I understand that layout of what she's doing. I think she's miserable. And I think that she is greatly unhappy with the direction of policy. I think she's bored. And when you get like that, you do makeup tutorials. I know this because I've done that. So you need to be moving forward. Her boredom is not going to be sustainable. I don't know if she'll ever stop being a member of Congress, but I don't think she has the interest to take over the DNC. Bernie has the interest. Bernie's group of people around him, people who've been diehard, they have an interest in doing it. AOC doesn't have an interest in doing it. And the reason why I think that is because whenever there's something that she could really latch onto with Joe Biden already to take on, she doesn't do it. She has not been a big, strong fighter since she took on Amazon in that area to stop the plant or whatever. Since then, it's been like, bad Trump, bad Trump. The more bored AOC gets, the louder she will become, and the more a power vacuum in that position will be created, and then someone else will take over.
What about the idea of her being the way to knock out Schumer? Right,
No.
they use her to knock Schumer out.
Schumer has huge support in New York, and I think in a way that people don't realize. Also, Chuck Schumer is not really upsetting anybody right now. Like, what has he really done that Democrats are angry about? He's been against Trump from day one, like more than Nancy Pelosi ever was when he first was inaugurated. He has been upset about every economic policy. The only thing I think he agreed with Trump on was moving the embassy, and he has massive Jewish support in New York as well. So why would they be upset about that?
Absolutely.
There's nothing really that you could make that argument for. Nancy Pelosi is a problem because people don't think she's listening to the caucuses. But
absolutely.
Chuck Schumer, if I'm a Democrat, I'm like, just leave Chuck Schumer alone. I often said during this race, where is Chuck Schumer? Does Chuck Schumer still exist? They're like, Mom, do you see Chuck Schumer? No, because he knows how to sit down and be quiet and when to get up. And why would you want to replace Chuck Schumer right now at this junction with AOC?
Brennan says there's also people who are more loyal to Trump than to the party ideals. Yes. So, but I don't see them going back to Democrats. I see them either checking out or staying Republican. Am I wrong with that?
No, they're not going back to Democrats. They were never Republicans. And this is one of the issues. These people who came in because of Trump. I was going to be a conservative, whether it was Trump, Rubio, whatever. I couldn't vote them, but I was going to be for the Republican nominee. I voted for Trump at this time. I supported him last time. Wasn't old enough to vote because I believed he could tackle terrorism. I believed he could have stopped what happened with Otto Warmbier. That was my linchpin with Trump. But people who came in solely because of him and never learned what conservatism was, never learned the platform, they're genuinely frustrated and confused because they don't know who to back. And he's not on Twitter. He's not on anything telling them. And it's not that they're not informed. It's that he never took care of them. He never took care of their ideological development. And when you have that, you have a group of people who are very disenfranchised and who honestly are very sad. The person in the GOP circuit who picks up those people and is empathetic and kind, that person will become a much bigger player in the Republican Party. I desperately hope it's not Don Jr.
Okay. Magdalen, what made you take this path into politics? Yeah. You kind of remind me of C.J. Pearson, who started in politics very young.
Well, I got involved in politics in 2018. I just graduated high school. The Parkland shooting happened in 2018. And what was horrifying to me, aside from the horror of what happened and all the failures that led to that, I've interviewed Andrew Pollack and all of that, and it was terrible. The other thing that was horrible to me of it was that young conservatives I knew who were still in high school were being bullied by their teachers and fellow students for not being in the gun control walkouts. And they were being treated terribly. They were getting refused by colleges because of pro-Second Amendment posts in that time period. Hogg was terrorizing the nation. That's why I have no sympathy for people who are like, Hogg's a child. Because Hogg was terrorizing this country for a year and a half and did not care. So I got involved because every young conservative leader I went to didn't respond to me or told me I was being hysterical because I was saying that there was a problem. And when that happened, I felt like, so you're the great representatives of young conservatism. You're the future. You're the people who are going to be leading the party. And you don't have time to do anything except on the street interviews and stand there and be like, bad young liberal. People were in real trouble. I had to make a decision about what fields I knew I could never go into if I was public about conservative beliefs. And once I made that decision, the idea that we're at that position and young conservatives are still going to like galas and dinners and having fun. It was so disgusting to me. And then it just sort of steamrolled from there.
Got it. Morris, I think he says what a lot of people believe. He says right-wing populism is based on racism and discrimination. I mean, doesn't that feel, we talk about feelings and facts, doesn't that feel exactly true? Doesn't that feel exactly correct? Or am I wrong?
I don't think we know what right-wing populism is. There is some of that in a lot of areas, and it's been something that's very bad in the Republican Party, and I think a lot of young women in the Republican Party deal with it as well. It's not only that, it's also, I don't want, like, people say misogyny doesn't mean anything anymore, but it can be very, very horrible. I mean, I've had people tell me that I look horrible, that my teeth are disgusting, like all these horrible things. So there's that element of it in it as well.
People have told you that?
Oh, yeah, from the beginning. What I'm wearing right now, young conservatives do not think is appropriate because it's not, like, put together enough. So that's what goes on. I think there's a lot of people who
I will, let me say publicly, platonically, I could be your father. Platonically, you are a lovely young lady.
Thank you so much. Yes. I think a lot of people in the Republican Party need to understand that populism is supposed to be about economics. And until we understand that, economics, education, healthcare, until you understand that, you're not going to win anything because there isn't a migrant crisis to campaign against right now. Merkel didn't just let in millions of people into Germany or into the European Union. That's not happening. And if you don't have that and your whole thing is about against one group of people, what do you expect to happen other than what's happened now?
So you think populism should always be economic?
Economic, and I think also education as well. Populism can have a real big play in education in terms of taking what is actually necessary knowledge-wise to be successful and putting it into education. I've had on people who talk about classical education, the classics, and reading all of that, and that's great, but I feel like they miss the point of what makes you competitive in the job market. And that's where populism excels, is what makes you competitive in the global and domestic job market.
So how do we get around, if you're a populist, how do we, as I'm not really populist, but for sake of argument, populist, how do you get around Morris's point that there's a huge chunk of Americans, I mean, tens of millions of Americans who think right-wing populism is based upon racism and discrimination. I'll never be part of it. And there's another part of Americans who say, that's just anti-racism beating us up. We're not about that. And they don't even want to hear it. So how do you, or do you just forget about populism and call it something else? How do you fix that gap, or do you even fix it?
I don't want America governed by a populist. I want America governed by a constitutionalist and a conservative. And I think what you have to do is you have to understand that America is not a populist country. There are people who are populist, but at the end of the day, you're a liberal or a conservative country. America is unique. There is nothing else like it. And for as long as we're attached to populism, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot. What people think of as populism is really common sense in a lot of areas in economics and healthcare. So you need to stop running towards something that you think is shiny and new. And you need to go back to constitutionalism and take some of the branding of just being around people, of going outside, of participating, of not thinking that you're so special you can only have to do rallies to get elected. If you take that and you just govern as a common sense constitutionalist who is creative and innovative in what they're doing, then I think you can be successful. And we don't have to run into the arms of right-wing populism. The strategists who push right-wing populism in the Republican Party, they're not here anymore. And they did a very bad job the last 4 years. And there were a lot of very bad elements in what they brought in. So I don't think it needs to be supported anymore.
Well, there we go. Well, Jan Rose is happy. She says, so very pleased to listen to Mahgdalen Rose. Thank you, Larry Sharpe, for bringing this to us. Well, there we go. You're winning.
Lovely.
I love it. Good. I want to talk a little bit about anxiety. And the reason why I want to say that is I want to play one more commercial. Larry Sharpe, host of the Sharpe Way here. Look, are you dealing with some anxiety, some stress, maybe some pain from hustling during this tough time? If you think a CBD product might help you relieve some of that anxiety or pain, head on over to grownselection.com. Check them out. High quality, top rated, Libertarian owned. Looking for creams, powders, oils, whatever is going to make your health better. Check them out. Make a purchase. Put in Sharpe Way 20. Get 20% off. They're our sponsor. Support us. Support your health. GrownSelection.com. Best CBD stuff out there. So I want to ask, I mean, cannabis is a big issue for many people, particularly the youth. But I want to ask you, what's your big issue? Is it the economy? Is it cannabis? Is it culture? I mean, you've talked about culture. You've talked about lots of things. What's your issue?
I'm a foreign policy person. I believe that every issue America has comes from an issue with foreign policy. And the reason why I say that is because when we have a stable world, we can focus on domestic growth. We can focus on where we're going forward in education. And foreign policy to me does not just mean wars. It means, how is our education system comparable to that of Austria's or that of India's and China's? And it comes down to domestic development and where we're going from that. I need somebody in the Republican Party to start to say things at the leadership level like, hey, our education system is a disaster compared to everyone else. I would say foreign policy and education are my biggest issues, but I believe they're so interwoven because we know what a successful education system is. We know what a successful education system isn't. By taking into consideration our foreign counterparts and seeing where they're going, we can figure out where we need to lead. Also, the amount of time and money we waste on useless wars is just ridiculous. It is horrifying to me. When Otto Warmbier was being sentenced to death in North Korea, and the Barack Obama administration, who had one of the worst getting hostages back strategies in history, they were pretty much saying it's over. And for me, as a voter, as a young person who's just a few years younger than Otto, I was so horrified by that, watching this young man be sentenced to what we knew was his death and torture. Yep. Not just death, but torture as well. That was my linchpin to backing Trump, because even though I believe Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and everyone wanted him back, I didn't believe that they were outside the box thinkers enough to do it. And Trump did get him back. He got back many hostages. Not that you know about it because no one talked about it in the campaign trail, but I want that to be the forefront. And when that happens, I think we'll win young people by the bucket load. I think that they will come over in a huge, huge way.
There we go. Well, Paula just subscribed to your YouTube channel, so you're getting a couple more. You're winning. There we go. I love that. Brennan says people want a comfortable life. I agree. Yeah. I think that's really the key. I think Brennan's on the money here. Yeah. And we've struggled these last 10 years. And if you came up during these last 10 years, the odds are, I mean, some people obviously have done very well, but the odds are you struggled, right? Yeah. You struggled. Yeah. And so I could get why people think this isn't working very well, right? I don't like this thing. I can see that completely. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. So does that mean, if those are your two big issues that you want to see, do you mean that only on a national level?
No.
Or do you think that matters throughout everything?
I think it matters throughout everything. I am baffled by the lack of private sector involvement that we have in this country. If you look at the education system, it's a disaster on every single level. And we're still relying on government curriculum boards to create curriculum, and not experts in fields, and not a coalition of real educators or retired teachers. I want people to take what America can do in the private sector and bring that thinking into the public sector, into government. I thought Trump was going to do that. I thought we were going to see Marcus Lemonis in the Oval Office. I thought we were going to see Shark Tank people there. I thought that was going to happen. It didn't. I don't know why it didn't, but that's what I thought was going to happen. I even thought we were going to see experts in foreign policy who didn't go to Harvard for it, leading foreign policy. Obviously, Mike Pompeo did a great job, but I wanted to see that. So I want to see that on a local level. If a local candidate here was like, I want to talk about education in Virginia, like, all right, let's have a conversation. Let's do it. I'm not opposed to that. So it's national, it's state, it's local, but it's also in the private sector as well.
You know, it's funny. It feels like to me Trump was what Obama was to me. Obama was my last chance at believing any party could do anything, right? That was my last chance. And I was so betrayed by him. Yeah. I mean, all the presidents before also, failed me. But I was betrayed by him because I believed the hope thing. Like, I fell for it. I was like, he's going to deal with race issues. He's going to end the war on drugs. He's going to do all those things he's going to stop the wars. He's going to do it all, because he wouldn't do that. Man, oh man, was that not true. Didn't do anything with the drug war and bombed more people than Bush did. Yeah. So, I mean, I was that's actually what got me to be libertarian thing more than anything else, because I was so open to hearing anything after that.
Yeah.
It was just so bad. So I get where you're going. Well, see, I went to Libertarian. Maybe you will too. Just saying. Maybe. Absolutely.
Depends on the nominee in 24.
All right, so we got to find the right one. Okay, I got you. No worries whatsoever. So hold on. John says, so based on your theory, Larry, I'm assuming that's me, Larry, a true libertarian would believe none of the dictators have the answers. And if we get them out of the way, we have found our nirvana. Well, I think there are two parts that I want to bring up. One, I don't believe in the thing of a true libertarian. I don't believe that to even exist. You might as well say a unicorn would believe, because I don't believe that exists. I want everyone to be more libertarian. I get that people are going to be conservative or are going to be liberal and be libertarians 100%. I get that. And I follow the 80-20 rule a lot. And that is, if I agree with you 80% of the time, you are my ally. Period. You are my ally, right? You may not be a libertarian even. You could be a Democrat or Republican, right? But if you believe 80% of what I believe, you're my ally. So I'm on that. And do I believe none of the dictators have the answer? No. I think some dictators could have the answers. They just have no right to enforce them. But they might have the answer. It's possible a dictator could have all of the answers. It's possible. They would simply have no right to enforce those answers. And if they really had the answers, they probably shouldn't be a dictator. They probably should just give the answers to us so we could implement them over time. So getting dictators out, I think, is in general a good thing. But to remember something, and this goes to a very important piece. What government almost always is, it's a monopoly and a jobs program. And anything it creates, it's those two things. If you knock that down, there's nothing there. And there are no jobs. So you can't just knock it down, right? We learned that in Iraq, right? He was a terrible dictator, but he was a monopoly and he was the jobs program. So when we took Saddam out, the entire place fell apart. Yeah. So would I just remove a dictator? No. Would I find a solution for that dictator to service the people prior to removing the dictator? Yes, I would. Yes, I would. Because people still need help. People still get in trouble. People still need, stability. People still need all those things. I just don't think dictators are the best way of making that happen. They are a way, but they're not the best way. So I hope I answered your question. So any comment on that, Mahgdalen? That was for me, but you can answer it if you want to.
I think that the fascination the right has with this authoritarian figure right now, I completely understand how it happened, because everyone feels like they've been pushed around for years and from the left. The problem is those people have a very hard time getting reelected, because the people that they put around themselves are not people who are strategists or data people. They are yes men. And that is what happened in the Republican Party. So if you want an authoritarian figure in 2024, make sure it's somebody who is, first of all, not crazy, and second of all, can be told no. And that seems like a contrast, but you can find those people, and Absolutely. We would need to.
So somebody wants you to take the political test. So you can go over to the advocates.org and take the political test. It's the world's smallest political quiz. Take it. You'll see what happens. So yes, I got fooled too, Larry. Don't feel bad. Absolutely. Yes, I got fooled too. Was Larry a Democrat? No, I was not a Democrat. When I was a little kid, I grew up in the Bronx, and my parents were hardcore Democrats. And so everybody was Republican who was evil because they were Republican. But I wasn't very political, so I guess I grew up in more of a Democrat household. But when I joined the Marine Corps at 17, for those of you who know that the Marine Corps is the most conservative of all the branches, and I think I became much more right-leaning when I was a young Marine, because most of the people who I looked up to as leaders, almost all of them were conservative. And Ronald Reagan was my first commander-in-chief. So I think I kind of became much more towards the right. My first vote was for president was George H.W. Bush. And I only voted for president because I was overseas for so many years. I didn't know local. So I only voted for president in those elections. Then I voted for Clinton because I thought he was going to change things. I mean, he did that cool, saxophone thing on Arsenio Hall show.
You know something? I call it the saxophone problem, when Republicans have been running the country for a while and everyone's like, it's okay, we're doing all right. And then America goes, but he plays the saxophone and he's cool and he's trendy. And that is the great white whale of the Republican strategy issue, the saxophone. problem.
I literally fell for it.
I will solve the saxophone problem.
I literally fell for the saxophone. I did. So I voted for Clinton thinking that, oh, well, he's different. He's poor. He's going to fix things because he's poor. That's what I honestly believed. I know it sounds so dumb, but I believed it. And he did nothing but put more of my brothers and sisters in prison, and that's all he did. So I hated it. After that, I was done. So I went third party back then in the 90s. I was like Perot, then I was Nader. I was like, these guys are going to be the right answer. And I stayed Nader twice, 2000 and 2004. And then when Obama came up, I was like, oh, this guy's different. They're not going to fool me this time. No saxophone's going to get me this time. That's what I thought. Yes, I'm sorry, Jay. I did fall for it. So I thought it was the right answer. And then after that, I was out. I was like, I'm done. They're all bad. I'm not doing this anymore. I was like not going to vote again. I was that disenchanted. And then I heard Gary Johnson speaking. Gary Johnson made sense to me. And I thought, oh. And then I joined a party. I'd never been in a party before. The first time I've ever was in a part of a party was the Libertarian Party. And that was in 2012. So, yes, I fell for it. I'm sorry. I'm human, guys. I'm human. What are you going to do? So, Larry Sharpe, are you married? Yes, I am. I've been married almost 20 years. 19 this year. Yeah, I think April makes 19 years. With my wife, 20, married 19, 2 children, 10 and 16. And I met my wife actually originally in high school. And we didn't get together for 10 years until 10 years after high school. And then we got together and we got married, been together 20 years. So thank you for that. I'm surprised you don't know that. Well, maybe he's one of your fans who came over to check me out. I hope so.
It's certainly possible.
That's good. Yes. So, all right. Is there anything that you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
I think it's interesting because I recently did an interview with Spike Cohen on my show as well. And I think a lot of times conservatives get very angry when I have libertarian guests on. I saw that in the YouTube chat room on my network. And the reason why I've done that is honestly because everything is broken in the GOP. We're in a disaster show. And I feel like libertarians and conservatives really need to be talking more because neither one of us, none of the groups want what's happening right now to be happening. But we are not people who are not liberals are not communicating outside of their groups. And I hope that changes because if we're just going to do what we did in 24, there's just no point. It's just not going to work. So I hope that conservatives and libertarians are having more conversations. The left wants everyone to forget that other people in other groups who are not liberals can communicate. And we really need to step up the coalition building on everything. I am with you. I think communication is everything. I'm trying to do it here with this show, bringing everybody on I possibly can. Yeah. I think we have to stop building coalitions completely. Yeah. So anyway, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And let me be clear. Some of you are already doing it, but you can check what she's doing in the show notes. I put her Twitter, her YouTube. Click there, check out what she's doing. Head over to Twitter, check her out. Absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for all the comments and for everything you did today. I appreciate it, guys. I will see you. For some of you, if you want to watch, I'm going on at 8:30 at the Beach Brothers podcast in like 15 minutes. I'll be on that. And then, of course, my show tomorrow, I will have Stacey Pressman on at 7 p.m. So I am staying busy. I will see you guys all very soon.